Aloha, oloha keia, Avelina mai ka a YouTube channel ke Aloha no Hawaii. Hello, this is Laura and welcome to my YouTube channel ke Aloha no Hawaii. In one of our earlier lessons, we learned the Hawaiian words for the and how to say things like kapuke, the book, kekeiki, the child, and naapua, the flowers. But what if you wanted to be even more specific about the object you're indicating? This book, that child, those flowers. Well, in this video, we'll learn the Hawaiian words for this and that, these and those.
In English grammar, this, that, these, and those are known as demonstratives because they specify which object you are referring to by demonstrating its location relative to the person who is speaking. This and these refer to objects that are near the speaker, and that and those refer to objects that are away from the speaker.
That's right. So let's dive in with our singular demonstratives, this and that. Now, if you watched our last video, you already learned the word for this, keia. Note that the A has a kahako over it, so that vowel is lengthened. Keia. And let's look at some examples. Keia puke, this book. Keia pua, this flower. Keia keiki, this child. Keia kane, this man. You'll note that it doesn't matter if the noun uses ka or ke for its definite article. For the demonstrative this, we'll just use keia. Ka puke, ke keiki, but just keia puke, keia keiki. Okay, but what about the Hawaiian word for that? Well, this is where Hawaiian differs from English. In English, we know that refers to an object that is far from, or at least not near the speaker. But in Hawaiian, as well as many languages around the world, the word that is broken out into two different words, depending on where the object you're speaking about is located in relation to the person you're speaking to. So first, we have one word for that when the object you're referring to is near the person to whom you are speaking. This is known as the medial demonstrative. And that word in Hawaiian is kena. Note that both the A and the A have the kahako over it, so both of those vowels are lengthened. Kena. So, say you're speaking to your friend Mary, and she's holding a book. You tell her, I want that book. In Hawaiian, you would say, make make au I ke na puke, because the book is near Mary, to whom you're speaking. Okay, there's a second word for that, for when the object you are referring to is far from both the speaker and the person being spoken to. This is known as the distal demonstrative. You can think of it as the distance away from the people in the conversation. And that Hawaiian word is ke la. So once again, the A and the A have the kahako, so both of those vowels are lengthened. Ke la. So say you're talking to your friend Mary again, and you see a book across the room from both of you. You tell her, I want that book. You would say, make make au I ke la puke, because the book is far from you and far from the person to whom you're speaking, Mary. Make sense? In case you were wondering, while ke na is known as the medial demonstrative and ke la is known as the distal demonstrative, keia, our word for this, is known as the proximal demonstrative because of the object's proximity to the person who is speaking. Now, you definitely don't need to know that terminology. I just wanted to bring it up because you might come across those terms in some of your other Hawaiian language learning resources. And actually, keia can also be called the first person demonstrative because the object you're referring to is near the person speaking. Similarly, keina is known as the second person demonstrative because the object you are referring to is near the person being spoken to. And finally, keila is known as the, you guessed it, third person demonstrative because the object is not near the person who is speaking nor the person being spoken to. And that's actually a good way to think about these demonstratives because it helps give you an idea of how you would swap them out when talking to someone. So let's think about how we use our personal pronouns, I, you, and he or she in a conversation with someone. Say you're talking to your friend Mary, and you ask her, do you read? Helu oe. Mary might reply, yes, I read. I, helu au. Now you use the personal pronoun you, oi, because you were speaking to Mary and asking about something that she does. And then Mary replied with oh, I, because she was talking about herself and she was the speaker. But think about another conversation with Mary. Say now you're talking about Bob. You ask Mary, does he read? Helu oia. Mary might reply, yes, he reads. I, helu oia. Both you and Mary use the personal pronoun oia for he because you were referring to a person who is neither the speaker nor the person being spoken to. Now let's use that concept of first person, second person, and third person with our demonstratives. Say you're talking to Mary again, and she's holding a book. You ask her, do you read that book? Helu oi I ke na puke? Mary might reply, yes, I read this book. I, helu au I ke ya puke. So, you use the second person demonstrative ke na because you were referring to the book which was near Mary, the person to whom you were speaking. And then Mary replied with keia, the first person demonstrative, because she was referring to that same book which is near her, the person speaking. But say you're talking to Mary, and now you're talking about Bob who is holding a book across the room from you. You ask Mary, helu oia I ke la puke? Does he read that book? Mary might reply, yes, he reads that book. I, helu oia I ke la puke. In that conversation, both you and Mary use the third person demonstrative ke la because you were referring to the book which was far from both the speaker and the person being spoken to. In short, if you're using ke na in a conversation with someone, that person will probably reply with keia and vice versa. But if you're using ke la in a conversation with someone, that person will likely respond with ke la because the object will be far from both of you. Make sense? Okay, we've learned our singular demonstratives, this and that. But how about our plurals, these and those? How do we turn this book, ke ya puke, into these books? Well, it's easy. And once again, if you watched our last video, this is going to look very familiar. In order to turn our singular demonstratives, keia, ke na, and ke la, into plurals, you just add mo after them. Ke ya puke, this book. Ke mo puke, these books. Ke na pua, that flower. Ke na mo pua, those flowers. Ke la keiki, that child's over there. Ke la mo keiki, those children over there. And I've mentioned this in some of the past videos, but it's worth pointing out again. When a noun is plural, you don't do anything at all to the noun itself. No adding an S. You just rely on the plural version of its ka'i, like keyamo, to indicate that the noun is plural. Okay, let's test ourselves with some practice sentences. Here's the setting. You have you, and you're talking to your friend, Mary. And across the room from you is a table. Now I'm going to present various scenarios, and you're going to fill in the sentence, Make makeau I blank pua. I want blank flower. You will fill it in with the correct demonstrative, depending on where the flower is and how many flowers there are. Makauko, ready? Okay. So we have one flower here on the table, which is across the room from you and Mary. And you want to tell Mary that's the flower you want. You would say, Make makeau I ke la pua. Because again, the flower is far away from both you and Mary, and it's only one, so we use the singular. Make makeau I ke la pua. Okay, let's say now you have a flower near you. Once again, you want to tell Mary you want the flower. You say, Make makeau I keia pua. I want this flower. Well, let's say now there are two flowers near Mary, the person to whom you are speaking. You say, Make makeau I ke na mo pua. Because there are more than one, so we're doing plural, and the flowers are near the person to whom you are speaking. Make makeau I ke na mo pua. Okay, well, how about we say now Mary just has one flower near her. You say, Make makeau I ke na pua, just the singular. I want that flower. Wow, now there are 3 flowers over on that table across the room from you two. You tell Mary, Make makeau I ke la mo pua. Because they're far from you and Mary, and there's more than one. Make makeau I ke la mo pua. Oh, and oh my, now there are 5 flowers near you. You tell Mary, Make makeau I keia mo pua. Make makeau I keia mo pua. How did you do? Mai kai. So far, we've looked at demonstratives as a ka'i, or determiner, words that are connected to nouns to provide more information about which noun you are indicating, such as the sentence, I read this book. Helu helu au I keia puke. But just like in English, in Hawaiian, demonstratives can also be standalone pronouns or papani, such as in the sentence, this is a book. He puke keia. In that sentence, the demonstrative this is acting as a pronoun, which is the subject of the sentence. But demonstrative pronouns can also be the object of the sentence, such as, I read this. Helu helu au I keia. You'll notice that just like in English, in Hawaiian, the singular demonstrative this is the same word, whether it's a ka'i or a papani, both subject and object. And the same can be said for our other singular demonstratives for that. Ke na puke or ke la puke, that book. He puke ke na or he puke ke la, that is a book. Helu helu au I ke na or helu helu au I ke la, I read that. However, the same cannot be said for our plural demonstratives, these and those. In that case, we're only going to use the plural form, such as ke yamau, when the demonstrative is a ka'i, so a word connected to a noun, like these books. If it's just a papani, a pronoun, whether a subject or an object, we just use the singular form of the demonstrative, and we rely on other elements of the sentence to tell us that the object being referred to is plural. Or sometimes we just presume that the object is plural because perhaps of other parts of the conversation which made it clear that the object was plural. Let me give you an example. Say you're saying, these are books. In Hawaiian, that would be he mo puke keia. Again, if you watched our last video on the papeki aike he, you know that he mo is the plural indefinite article, and he mo puke essentially means books. So because he mo is already making books plural, we don't need a plural version of keia because we know it's already plural. Now let's take the sentence, I read these. Now our demonstrative is the object of the sentence as a papani. In Hawaiian, that would be helu helu au I keia. Now, that's the exact same sentence as I read this. There's nothing in that sentence which tells us it's plural out of context. But we can assume that there were earlier parts of the conversation that gave us that information. For example, maybe someone said, are those books? He mau puke ke na? And the other person replied, yes, I read these. I helu helu au I keia. So we had the context from the first sentence that tells us that the books were plural, so we didn't necessarily need it in the second sentence. Does that make sense? Okay, let's wrap up by reviewing all of our demonstratives one more time. Let's begin with our singular demonstratives, starting with this. As a ka'i, we use keia, such as keia puke, this book. As a papani, we also use keia, such as he puke keia, this is a book. Our word for that, when the object is near the person being spoken to, as a ka'i, ke na, such as ke na pua, that flower. As a papani, also ke na, such as he pua ke na, that is a flower. And finally, our demonstrative that, when the object is far from the speaker and the person being spoken to, as a ka'i, ke la, such as ke la keiki, that child over there. As a papani, also ke la, such as he keiki ke la, that child's over there, that is a child over there. Now our plural demonstratives. Let's start with these. As a ka'i, keia mo, such as keia mo puke, these books. As a papani, just keia, such as he mo puke keia, these are books. For those, when the objects are near the person being spoken to, as a ka'i, we use ke na mo, such as ke na mo pua, those flowers. But as a papani, we just use ke na, such as he maupua ke na. Those are flowers. And finally, our demonstrative those when the objects are far from both the speaker and the person being spoken to. As a ka'i, it's ke la mo, such as ke la mo keiki, those children over there. But as a papani, it's just ke la, such as he mau keiki ke la, those are children over there. Mahalo for watching. I just want to point out a number of things that you'll find in the description below. First, if you've missed any of our past grammar videos, you'll find links for all of those lessons in that description, as well as links to a number of my favorite Hawaiian language learning resources. And if you want to connect with us on social media, you'll also find links to those in the description below. If you liked this video, please click that thumbs up button. And if you want to know when new videos are released, click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Until next time, a hui hou.